For decades, Canada has faced a persistent, invisible enemy. An enemy that stifles our growth, complicates our commerce, and costs our economy billions each year. This enemy is not a foreign power. It is our own reflection. We are a nation bound by our constitution, yet divided by a labyrinth of internal rules, a country where it can be easier to trade with a nation 1,000 miles away than with a province next door. But now yet a new agreement has been signed. Hopefully this one will do it. It is a pledge to tear down those internal walls for good. In this report, we will investigate this monumental challenge in those three acts. First, the Great Wall of red tape, the absurd and costly reality of interprovincial trade barriers. Second, the first breach, analyzing the new agreement and whether it represents real progress or just more promises. And third, the unified symphony, the staggering potential for Canada if we finally complete the job of becoming a truly unified economic power. This is the story of Canada's greatest untapped resources, itself. To understand the problem, you must see its consequences. Imagine a construction company in Ontario, its trucks loaded with equipment ready for a project in a neighboring province. Take a look.
We have made progress over the past 30 years. Sometimes we get so focused on the areas where we are not doing well that we forget to maybe acknowledge that there has been progress. So in 1995, we had the Agreement on Internal Trade come into play. And I mean, just the idea that we wanted to trade with each other was a good step forward. But that agreement was widely, sort of by the time the Canada Free Trade Agreement came into play in 2017, was widely considered a bit of a gong show, partly because you were only included in that those goods that free trade applied to if you were on what's called a positive list. So you had to be on the list. Well, imagine how many new goods and services had been created. And
what does it mean to be in the positive list?
So on the positive list would be we would have free trade in, say, forest products, or we would have free trade in mining products. But if you weren't on the list, so there were whole new categories of goods that came into play, computer parts that didn't exist in 1995 when the agreement was first negotiated, then you wouldn't be included in the agreement. So it was a really outdated way of approaching trade agreements, and the rest of the world had moved on to a much more modern approach called a negative list, which means you are subject to the free trade agreement unless you are specifically on a list that says you are not. And what that does is it makes it really transparent. People can see, okay, you have an exemption and you are not on the list. Well, does that make sense to us? And we can challenge each other, and media can ask questions about it. So it was a much more transparent way of doing things. But what it didn't cover was regulatory standards. So there are all kinds of barriers that, yes, you can sell. My favorite example, Michelle, is a construction company in Ontario said, yeah, you can sell toilet seats across Canada, but we have very specific rules in Ontario that require them to be have a specific kind of lid. So if that's the kind of toilet seat you produce in BC, you can sell it to Ontario, but nobody can use it on their work site.
There's no uniformity.
Yeah, so there was so it was like...
But the journey is stopped not by geography, but by our bureaucracy. The standards for materials are different. The certifications for workers are not recognized. What is legal and safe in one province is suddenly suspect just across the river. This is the reality of Canadian businesses. A patchwork of 14 different jurisdictions, each with its own rules, its own certifications, its own unique brand of red tape. The most glaring absurdity remains in critical areas. Even though progress has been made over the years, a doctor trained and licensed here in BC cannot simply move to another province to practice without jumping through the new sets of regulational hoops, similar for nurses and other healthcare workers. Since when does human anatomy change at the provincial border? Food, alcohol, and regulated professions like construction and healthcare notably still excluded from the latest agreement. Those are not minor sectors. They are the lifeblood of interprovincial commerce and mobility. This system has sent a terrible signal across the world. It tells international partners that Canada is inefficient, that we cannot get our own house in order. And perhaps most damagingly, our deep reliance on trade with the US has allowed this dysfunction to fester. For many businesses, it has been easier to look south than to navigate the maze within our own country. We have pumped an unthinkable amount of money into the US only because we could not trade with our own neighboring province. In our own country, let that sink in for a moment. Against this background, the new agreement to drop interprovincial trade barriers is being hailed as a breakthrough, and in some ways it is. The core principle is simple and powerful. If a product is deemed safe for sale in one province, it should be accepted in another one. No more duplicated testing, no more costly recertification. BC's ministers called it the largest red tape reduction in Canada's history. But we must look past the hype and into the details. The agreement itself is 45 pages long, and tellingly, more than 3/4 of those pages are not about unity but about division. They are a lengthy list of exemptions for specific products and sectors that provinces have carved out for themselves. The old habit of red tape, it seems, dies hard. This is incremental progress, not the revolutionary change that was promised years ago with the Canadian Free Trade Agreement. We have heard those promises before. The history of international trade in Canada is a history of ambitious announcements followed by slow, grinding implementations. So, is this time different? The Carney government has taken a decisive step, but the true test will be the execution. In my humble opinion, the political will to override provincial preferences for the greater national good must be unwavering. Which leads us to the ultimate question. What is the price? What does Canada stand to gain if we finally, completely remove those internal barriers? The figures are not merely impressive, they are more transformative. A potential of $200 billion boost to our economy. Billions that could be redirected from paying for importing US goods to investing in Canadian-made products, strengthening our domestic supply chain and our economic sovereignty. This is not just about statistics, it is about building a more resilient, more self-reliant nation. In reality, it is about creating a single, powerful Canadian market that can compete on the global stage with the weight of 40 million people united, not 14 regions divided. The European Union, with 27 different nations, has managed to create a seamless single market. Friends, think about that. For Canada, with 13 provinces and territories, our continued failure to do so is an embarrassment of riches. The path forward is clear. We must adopt a negative list approach, where everything is permitted unless explicitly exempt, forcing transparency and accountability. We must eliminate the tough exemptions from agriculture, supply chain management to professional certifications. It must be done quickly and effectively. Enough with the unnecessary delaying procedures of double and triple testing than putting it back on the desk only to take another look next week. This is 2025 for bubble wrap's sake, not 1965. The world moves fast, and so should we. The agreement signed in Winnipeg is a necessary and welcomed foundation, but it is only the foundation. The house of a truly unified Canadian economy, still only half built, needs to be completed quickly. The removal of interprovincial trade barriers is more than an economic policy. It is truly a test of our national vision. Do we see ourselves as a collection of individual jurisdictions competing with each other? Or do we see a single, powerful nation where goods, services, and people can move as freely as our ideals? The recent agreement proves that progress is possible when political will is applied. But it also reveals how much further we have to go. The 200 billion opportunity is not a fantasy, it's a choice. A choice to cut the red tape that binds us. A choice to look inward to our prosperity. A choice to build a Canada that is finally open for business with itself. Take it or leave it. The first brick has been removed from the wall. So my question is, will we have the courage to tear down the rest? Or do we continue in business as usual? I would like to know, have you been impacted by our provincial trade barriers? Perhaps you are a small business owner or work in trades? Do you feel that BC wine is good here in our province, but you can't bring it with you as a gift when visiting a family in Alberta is okay? Please let me know in the comments below. If this video gave you value, then please click the like and subscribe button. It really helps the channel. And if you like this channel's deep dives, please ring the bell so you won't miss my next one. Thanks for watching. I am Wilfried Lemkuler from Europe Curious.
You by our side, and we spent so many nights thinking how you did us wrong. Now we've banded all together. Your tariff made us strong, and so you know you're not so great. There's not a snowball's chance in hell will be your 51st state. We really need our resources for more than we need you, so now just go. Walk out the door. We do not need you. You're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who instigated these trade fights? You'll soon grow to regret it when we turn off your lights. We will survive. As long as we can think and work, we know we'll stay alive. We have all we really need. We can live without your greed. We will survive. We will survive. There's been a change. It's time anew. We're not that fledgling little country stealing all of you. We are now a nation proud that is happy to be free. You didn't realize you gave us our own identity, so now just go. We will survive. As long as we can think and work, we know we'll stay alive. Yeah, but all we really need, we can live without your greed. We will survive. We'll survive. We will survive. Survive.
51st state, my fucking ass. Go on, Canada.